NBA teams have some strange nicknames. The LA Lakers, for example, are based in an area not known for its lakes. The Memphis Grizzlies have no local Grizzly Bears. And the Utah Jazz, well, that's also quite confusing. But these names make a lot more sense when you understand their history. You see, only 13 of the 30 franchises in the NBA today are still in the same geographical location that they were founded in. The other 17 teams have all moved. Okay, let's start with the Sacramento Kings. They began life in Rochester, New York, as the Rochester Royals in 1945 before switching to Cincinnati in 1951. The Royals were then purchased by a Kansas-based consortium who moved them to split their home games between Omaha, Nebraska and Kansas City in 1972. And baseball fans among you will know that Kansas already had a team called the Royals, so the name had to be changed to the Kings. They moved full-time to Kansas in 1975, but moved again to Sacramento 10 years later. The Denver Nuggets also technically left Kansas City after the city was chosen as one of the founding franchises of the ABA. The team were never given a nickname though, and never played before relocating to Denver, where they were named the Rockets after their owner Bill Ringsby's Ringsby Rocket Truck Lines. They changed their name to the Nuggets in 1974 though, in anticipation of joining the NBA, who already had a team called the Rockets. That was of course the Houston Rockets, but they themselves were actually founded in San Diego in 1967. The name was decided by a fan vote and as an homage to San Diego's growth in space-age industries. They moved to Houston in 1971, but thankfully, the name still worked due to the city's ties with NASA. Their state rivals, San Antonio Spurs, began as the Dallas Chaparrals in 1967 and were named after a club room in the Sheraton Dallas Hotel where the founding owners met. The team moved to San Antonio in 1973 though and were given the Spurs nickname as a reference to cowboy boots. The Detroit Pistons began life in Indiana as the Fort Wayne Pistons, where they were the works team for a factory that made pistons primarily for cars, trucks, and locomotive engines. They turned pro in 1941 and moved to Detroit in 1957 to take advantage of the bigger market that had been vacated by teams who'd moved or disbanded after the Second World War. One of those teams was the Detroit Gems, who were purchased and moved to Minneapolis in 1947, where they became the Lakers after the Minneapolis nickname as the land of 10,000 lakes. The name stuck, even after they moved to Los Angeles in 1960, where there are considerably fewer lakes. Similarly confusing in their name are the Memphis Grizzlies, given there's no Grizzly Bears in Memphis or even in Tennessee. But the name makes more sense when you know that the team began life in Vancouver in 1995 as part of the NBA expansion into Canada, before moving to Memphis in 2001. The Utah Jazz also fall into the category of ill-fitting nicknames. They began life as the New Orleans Jazz in 1974, after the city's famous jazz music scene. In 1979 though, they moved to Salt Lake City in Utah, a place that, it's fair to say, has less of a tie to the jazz scene. But the move happened so close to the NBA's relocation deadline that there was no time to change things, and so the Jazz nickname stuck. The Atlanta Hawks also have their name tied to their previous location. They started life as the Tri-City Blackhawks in Moline, Illinois, which at the time was part of an area known as the Tri-Cities that included Moline, Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. The name was a nod to the 1832 Black Hawk War that had taken place there, but in 1951 they moved to Milwaukee and shortened the name to Hawks. They had just 4 years in Milwaukee before moving to St. Louis in 1955, and in 1968 they moved to Atlanta, taking the Hawks name with them. The Golden State Warriors were originally the Philadelphia Warriors, but moved to San Francisco in 1962. They began playing more and more games in Oakland though, and in 1971, rather than changing to the city-specific Oakland Warriors name, they chose the more statewide name of Golden State as an homage to California's nickname. The space that the Warriors left behind in Philly was filled by the 76ers, who began life as the Syracuse Nationals, but moved in 1963. The name was chosen by fans, and it's a nod to the Declaration of Independence, which was signed in Philadelphia in 1776. The Washington Wizards, meanwhile, began in 1961 as the Chicago Packers, but moved to Baltimore in 1963, where they rebranded as the Bullets after the BAA franchise had previously been in the city, but folded in 1954. The team moved to the Capitol Center in Landover, Maryland in 1973 and became the Capitol Bullets, but again rebranded after just 1 year, this time to the statewide Washington Bullets. However, with high homicide rates in Washington in the early 90s, owner Abe Polin felt uncomfortable with the Bullets nickname and the decision was made to change to the Wizards in 1997. The Brooklyn Nets started as the New Jersey Americans in 1967, but moved to Long Island in 1968 and changed their name to the New York Nets, partly because of basketball nets, but also because it rhymed with Mets and Jets. Then they moved back to New Jersey in 1977 before finally relocating to Brooklyn in 2012. The Oklahoma City Thunder started out as the Seattle Supersonics in 1967. The name was a reference to Boeing, who were founded in Seattle and had begun work on a Concorde-like plane that was going to be called the Supersonic Transport. The Supersonic never saw the light of day, but the name stuck until the team moved to Oklahoma in 2008, where they changed their name to the Thunder in reference to the state's position in Tornado Alley, and OKC's status as the home of the US Army's 45th Infantry Division, the Thunderbirds. The LA Clippers have one of the more bizarre movement histories in the NBA. They began as the Buffalo Braves in 1970, but struggled financially. And owner John Y. Brown Jr., who'd made his fortune growing KFC into one of America's top fast food chains, was keen to move the team. At the same time, Irv Levin, who owned the Boston Celtics, was keen to move the Celtics closer to his home of Southern California. Knowing that would never be allowed by the NBA, Levin and Brown came to an unprecedented but mutually beneficial solution of swapping their teams in 1978. Brown would now own the Celtics, while Levin would take over the Braves and move them to San Diego, where they were renamed the Clippers after the sailing ships seen in San Diego's bay. Levin then sold the Clippers to Donald Sterling, who moved the team to LA in 1984. And if you thought that was complicated, wait until you hear about the New Orleans Pelicans and Charlotte Hornets. You see, Charlotte was chosen for expansion in 1988, and the team chose the name Hornets due to the popular story that the British General Cornwallis had described the city as a hornet's nest of rebellion after the Battle of Charlotte in 1780. The team moved to New Orleans in 2002, but kept the Hornets name. Part of the deal to allow the Hornets to move was that Charlotte would get a new expansion team straight away. They began as the Charlotte Bobcats in 2004 because the name aligned with the Big Cat theme of the Carolina Panthers NFL team, who also play in North Carolina. But in 2005, the Hornets were forced to temporarily move to Oklahoma City after Hurricane Katrina had severely damaged the New Orleans arena. The team became the New Orleans/Oklahoma City Hornets before returning to New Orleans in 2007. And then, in 2012, the Hornets came under new ownership who wanted a name with more relevance to New Orleans. They chose the Pelicans, because it's the Louisiana state bird, and began playing under that branding from the 2013-14 season. With the Hornets name now up for grabs, Charlotte, who were by now owned by Michael Jordan, filed to reclaim their old title. It was accepted, and from the 2014-15 season, Charlotte became the Hornets again.
If you like this video, please consider subscribing to the channel. The Athletic is home to the best team of sports writers, reporters, and analysts in the world, offering exclusive stories and unrivaled insight.